I'm calling to order the special session of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs on Thursday, December 3rd, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. As you know, Commissioner Terrapini notified us that he's not feeling well and he's asking to participate virtually. Since we have a quorum, the board can make one of the following motions: to allow him to participate virtually and allow him to vote. Number two will be to excuse his absence, but not to allow him to participate. And number three will be to excuse his absence. So I need a motion.
Motion to excuse his absence and allow him to vote.
Give a second.
Can you tell me the options one more time?
One of the options is to allow him to participate virtually, and he'll be able to participate in a meeting and vote. Number two is to excuse his absence, but not to allow him to participate. And number three is not to excuse his absence.
Okay.
I need a second.
I like option one, so I'm not going to second that one.
I think,
That's
didn't I
what
make
you got.
option one?
Oh, you did? Okay.
I said
your option was-
excuse his absence and let him
Well, it
participate.
Option one.
For clarification, it wouldn't be an excusal. If he's participating, he would be present at the meeting. So it would just be allowing him to participate virtually.
Okay, motion to allow him to participate virtually.
Second.
The roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas?
Yes. I don't know if we need to do another roll call for the meeting. And if we do, Ms. Jacobs, why don't you do that anyway?
Mayor LaHousas?
Here?
Vice Mayor Carr? Commissioner Terrapini?
Here.
Commissioner Donovan?
Here.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Here.
We are now going to the public comments of the items that will not be discussed tonight. If anyone has any comments, please come forward, state your name and your address for the record. You'll be given 4 minutes. And I also like to remind to everyone that all public comments must be directed only to the chair of the meeting in a professional manner, with respect, without a personal attacks. If anybody has any comments, please come forward to the podium.
Panayoti Kulyas, 595 Peninsula Avenue. Good evening, Tarpon Springs, Tarponites worldwide. Tonight is a special session agenda. It's a very important night in the history of Tarpon Springs, as you guys have all heard the citizens' voice and their vote. Their vote matters. We voted for an internal auditor, and this is what we want: a transparent and honest Tarpon Springs. Now, I see there's two candidates on here. Is one of the candidates here today?
Go ahead, finish up with your comments, please.
Okay, well, I will say, whoever this candidate is that you all select, be strong. We want you to be your independent person. From the city manager, the city attorney, as well as the city and collector's office. You are free to roam. You are free to pull all documents you want without having to answer to nobody, except for the commission. Now, how we came about this, I brought minutes from prior board meetings, was basically kicking the can down the road. We kicked the can down the road, and I'll explain that later when the public comments come up again. Now, we've come up with excuses of not having the budget, not enough work for them. Well, there is plenty of work, Tarpon Springs, and the citizens are going to see it happen. My first order is to ask right away to the finance department, the premium that we pay on water and waste management. It is rumored to be anywhere between 10 to 20%. I would ask, if that is the case, drop it back down right away for the citizens of Tarpon Springs. It will help their everyday lives. Don't get caught up in this mess afterwards once we have this internal auditor, because it's not going to look good for everybody. I also pulled the email request to ask for all expenditures from Mark LaCouris for the past 2 years, and I was shocked to see barely any. I did see on February 22nd, 2019, $145 at the World Golf Lodging for police accreditation. I will ask you, are the city manager, I don't know what you're doing at the police accreditation for our police department. Maybe city managers do that all the time. I don't know. And I will also, there was only about $1,100. And to tell you the truth, I don't believe in that. A lot of citizens don't. And we are looking forward towards this transparency. So going to hire an internal auditor started all the way back in July 19th, 2010. And that's when it first got brought up to be posted soon from a special session. Here's where the kicker lies on October 18th, 2011, when our city attorney, Yakov Owens, wrote a memoranda. I have not seen the memoranda, but from what I understand and how I look at things, attorneys can spend things the way they want the commission to vote, as well as the influence of the city manager. Somehow you guys were able to call out internal auditor to be bought from outside, and they come in, they do a couple checks and balances, some simple areas, they call it a day. Well, that's not good enough. We're gonna have to do better, Tarpon Springs. So I'm gonna give you all a few minutes, to go over everything, and I will continue my presentation afterwards. Thank you. God bless you all.
Do we have any other public comments? Do we have any other public comments? Here none. Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails?
No emails were received.
Thank you. Mr. Jab, do we have any attendees wishing to speak?
If anyone attending via Zoom would like to speak, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
Thank you. Okay, we are now going to the item number 1, which is the candidate interviews. The purpose of tonight's meeting, the public meeting, is to have a face-to-face interview to finalize the ranking and possibly to select a candidate for the position of the internal auditor. We have 2 finalists that we're going to interview tonight, Mr. Blair Henderson and Mrs. Monica Castle. And I would like to ask Mrs. Niffet to please bring candidate number 1. Thank you. You must be Mr. Henderson, right?
I am.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Good to see all of you. I am,
Come to the podium, and when you're ready, please state your name and your address for the record.
I am Blair Henderson. I currently preside at 3815 Cortez Drive in Tampa, zip code 33614. Can I just proceed?
Well, first, I would like to welcome you to Tarpon Springs, and I want to thank you for your desire to work for the city of Tarpon Springs and be part of our community. And if you please, like, just take a few minutes to tell us about yourself and your qualifications about as to become the internal auditor for Tarpon Springs.
Absolutely. So again, I'm Blair Henderson. I just want to say as well, I am super excited to be here. This is truly a unique opportunity and really to be a part of the city's history. If I may say quickly, I was born in Cincinnati. My parents moved down to Countryside, and being there frequently, my parents would bring my sister and I to the Sponge Docks, where we were able to, explore all the shops and try the amazing Greek cuisine. In addition to that, to really learn about the history of the city and the Sponge Docks and how it's played such a pivotal role in the history's past as well as currently. And one of the other experiences that really bring, memories and joy about being with Tarpon Springs is on obviously January 6th of coming to Epiphany and watching at the bayou the retrieval of the cross. I mean, this is truly a city that is very unique and prides itself in Greek tradition and culture. And I think that is one of the things that makes it truly beautiful. In addition to that, I want to say thank you for all of your hard work and dedication for the city. I feel that it is very apparent in the progress that it has made. And really, this is a full service city. And by that, it is the services of the marina, the police, as well as you have your own reverse osmosis plant where you make and sell your own water to the neighboring county as well. So again, kudos for all of your hard work and dedication. So I just wanted to lightly speak about, what this is and the opportunity, as well as to acknowledge the city's rich culture and, to give you kudos as well for all of your hard work. At that point, like you said, Commissioner Alahus, it was talking about my experience. And I think that's one of the qualifications that I, without a doubt, bring to this position is my, while working with Crow Horwath, I was a member of the team that audited the city of Tampa and Lakeland as well. So that directly relates to this position because I gained a ton of experience looking at the financials and the reporting processes, as well as to ensure that they were in compliance with the standards. So that is the experience that directly relates to this position. But in addition to that, I have worked at very large, well-developed companies such as MetLife Corporate Internal Audit, as well as Jabil. And that's where I really was able to gain, the knowledge and the experience of a very well audit department compared to, say, other departments. From there, I was also while I worked at Jabil, I actually started or wanted to be a member and was a member of Hillsborough County's internal audit committee, to where I was a civil servant to them and being able to add valuable insight to their processes and controls. And that's where I was able to work for them as well and really be able to see and experience the value that, being a civil servant is, and being able to ultimately help people out. Because I feel like that is what a city is for, to ensure that the services and the safety is there to help ultimately the community and its residents. And that's something that I am very passionate about, is two things primarily: auditing, as well as ultimately helping, knowing that all that hard work and dedication helps the people, the residents. And that's where I feel that this specific job is so unique, because it is able to bring those two things together.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, we are now going to commission questions, and start with me. Your resume is very impressive. You have the qualifications for internal auditor. And I want to thank you for providing us initial process on how to establish internal audit department. One of the questions that I have is why we should hire you. Why do you think you are more qualified for the job than the other applicant?
Experience that I mentioned in governmental. Even to this point, I have really dedicated.
May I ask you to come closer to
Yes,
the,
sorry about
so you
that,
can
yeah.
get better reception?
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
Again, I think it's my experience in governmental, working for the county and the city and those departments. So like you said, it is essential to really come to this knowing that having that governmental experience and city experience, I'm already coming in here hitting the ground running. And in addition to that, I handed each of you a packet which really includes a lot of work that I have done before this to really be able to knock this out of the park. And to specifically answer your question, why do I feel that I would maybe be more qualified than the other candidate, is because I have the experience, but I can also come in here hitting the ground running. Specifically, I have developed already at this point the actual audit plan for this department. And I mean, so I developed that, and that took several days to do, but I haven't just done year one. I actually developed the audit plan for year 2 and year 3. So one of the items that I did with that development of that audit plan is to really be able to identify the hours that we'd be able to devote to our core competencies, such as performing audit work and reviews and special assessments. And that's where in the first year, we'd be able to do approximately 11 to 1,200 hours of actual audit work. Year 2, with improved efficiencies, where we would already have the department's charter and policies and procedures written. Year 2, we'd be able to gain an additional 200 to 300 hours of audit work. Year 3, with improved as well as efficiencies within the actual department, we'd have an additional 100 hours. So that is one thing that I have taken a lot of time to develop, to where this audit plan can really, again, come in here and hit the ground running. I have also developed the department's own charter. And to take a second to speak about that is the first thing that needs to be completed for this department. So again, to be able to come in here on day one and just really hit the ground running, to be able to then focus on what matters, which is doing those audits. I am not just weeks ahead of schedule or the other candidate. I am in essence, I'd say a month ahead of the other candidate. So to do the audit plan, to write the city's charter, to ensure that it's actually in compliance with the III Red Book standards, as well as specifically tailoring it to the job function and responsibilities of the city, and to include other items as, making sure that it aligns with, the community as well. So the stakeholders and the residents know that internal audit is here to also help the city to do their job to their best ability. So the audit plan, I even wrote certain policies and procedures in place. If that's one of the things that I can to maybe during this or at any point, if you would like me to, I can really kind of show you the audit life cycle. So developing the audit procedures as well. I have, like I said, done an extensive amount of work to be able to come in here on day one and hit the ground running. Thank you.
Thank you. look at your resume, notice that you move around a lot. You change your jobs very often. We need to have an internal auditor to serve the city and the people of Tarpon Springs for many years to come. Can you please explain why you're moving around a lot?
Absolutely. And I knew that this was going to be a question because since applying to this position, I knew that the fastest way to really have a pulse on the city and to see what was certain projects that was happening was to watch the board meetings. So I knew that that was actually going to be one of the questions. In addition to watching those board meetings, it allowed me very valuable insight to all of you and the questions that you would ask. Because if I was fortunate enough to get this position, then I would be able to, let's say, do an audit, come up here and know that one of you might have a question and I can come prepared at that point to be able to provide the insight in a timely manner right then and there. But to go back to your question, which is my tenure at each of those positions, I feel makes me the ideal candidate. And if I may take a second to actually explain that. First of all, this is awesome. I'm super excited to be here. Sorry. At Crow Horwath, which was the first company I worked with, I gained a ton of valuable experience that directly relates to this position. Again, auditing the city of Tampa and Lakeland. While working at Crow, I knew that to be able to advance my career to the next level, I would have to get my CPA license. And unfortunately, because of the extensive amount of time that I was traveling and working, I knew that it ultimately might not be feasible. And to better put myself to be in a situation where I can successfully pass or study and pass the CPA, I knew I could do that at MetLife, which is where I was able to. At MetLife, I gained the other experience crucial to this job, which is the internal audit experience, obviously. At MetLife, I wanted to ultimately work my way up the corporate ladder and really gain that experience through that process. During that time, there was an opportunity that arose at Jabil to where I could be the lead internal audit manager for that department to be able to fast track me to be able to gain that experience again to successfully lead a department, which I was able to do there. That job at Jabil was truly a unique opportunity, and that's where I also served again on the board of Hillsborough County Audit, and that's where I really learned that I could audit, but then also work for a governmental entity such as the county and the city to ultimately help the people. So from that, that kind of filled two things that I'm passionate about, which is being an auditor, but to also ultimately help the community and the people. And before diving in all the way, I wanted to at least test the waters. I felt at that point from going from the public sector to private, from the private sector to governmental is a huge leap. It really is. And at that point, like I said, I wanted to test the waters, which is where I did a consulting role. And through that experience, I was able to, again, gain additional experience within auditing a city and a county. But then ultimately, I knew this. And I was, after that consulting role for Hillsborough County Internal Audit, which I was then going to get a job, I sat back and I knew at that point, I was only as strong as my weakest link. With all the experience that I had being an external auditor, an internal auditor, and ultimately making that transition, there was one point where I was weak. And it was the fact that I was lacking the internal audit experience. And I knew working with the county, I wasn't going to gain it, or it would be very challenging. And that's where I did a consulting role with PwC that truly allowed me to gain a ton of insight on how to successfully review the IT controls of systems, the actual computer code, the source code, to ensure that the information from one accounting system to the next is right. In addition to that, the computer code on user access rights for systems, that is really cutting edge experience that I needed to gain. And after gaining that, I went to work for Hillsborough County Internal Audit. And again, I loved it. I did. I loved coming into work every single day and knowing through all the hard work and dedication, it made a difference to the community and the residents. But unfortunately, what I was told that I'd be doing and the opportunity to have a leadership role within that department, I feel was said to me to really just get me into the door. And ultimately, over the last year, the direction of that department has actually changed to where they weren't doing audits. They weren't. There was no new audits issued this year. No new audit work has been done. The direction of the department has completely changed. So again, I realized that I wasn't doing what I'm compassionate about. And at that point, I left to look for another opportunity. And I'm a strong believer that everything happens for a reason, which is why I'm here right now. And again, going back to what I initially said, I believe that because of all that experience that I have actually makes me the ideal candidate, because I am now able to quickly come into an organization and be adaptive, flexible, and a quick learner. And this position will absolutely require that. There is no question about it. So if I would have stayed with one company throughout my entire career, then at that point, truly how diverse would my experience be? And then my flexibility wouldn't be there. So that's where I would say that by gaining all of that, that's what makes me dedicated to this organization and wanting to be here. So in a long story short, the reason why I want to be, or it was the duration, and if maybe a concern that I wouldn't be here for a long duration, I can say that is not a concern, because from everything that I have gone through, it's this. This city excels in so many ways. And ultimately, I want to be a part of something that's great, and not just a part of it. I want to equally be able to contribute my knowledge, my experience to the city and add value. And to the point of knowing that this will be, without a doubt, a very challenging process that, or to create such a department from the ground up will be very challenging, yet rewarding. And ultimately, I know with my skill set, I am able to come in here and to really show the value of this department and what it has to offer to all of you, to the entire organization, and ultimately the community and its residents. That's why I want to be here. I want to be a part of something great and to help out. So,
Thank you.
yes, thank you.
You mentioned about skills. What makes you particularly excellent in terms of accuracy, reliability, and organization skills?
What was the, I'm sorry, what was the last one?
Accuracy, reliability, and organization skills.
I think for all those, the accuracy part, I've learned through my experience that you can't rush anything. You really have to take your time through it and make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And by ultimately knowing it's the quality of work. And I think that is who I am as an individual, that I want to be sure that I do a good job. And I think see the quality.
Reliability and organization skills.
Reliability as if I say I'm going to do it, I will without a doubt do it to the best of my ability. So hopefully that has answered your question.
Thank you. In Tarpon Springs, we are doing many projects using contractors and a bidding process. What programs can you introduce to verify that we are receiving the best prices possible for products and services for the city is doing for the bidding process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first part is really ensuring that the control, when there's a bid that's put out there, that you should have a certain amount of vendors that apply to the process. So I think that's one of the, a control that can be in place that, if there's something that's put out, to ensure that there's multiple bids. Also on that point, it's to, and this can be a efficiency or cost saving measure, that through this process of looking for bids, that when it's advertised, really to be able to see, what source gets the most responses with. Because if there's, let's say, 4 venues that you're advertising a certain position or service, and if it comes back that all of the replies have came back from 3, the cost saving measure is to use that to your advantage and to know that it doesn't really make sense to advertise for the solicitation on that one source. And it would be better for the city to actually advertise on the 3 other sources. So again, it's ensuring that there's multiple bids for the services, as well as as a control, I'd say, to really be able to determine your best venue of advertising, to really save money, to also ensure that the majority of responses come back, you get more.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you one more question, then I'll go to the vice mayor. This position requires impartiality and confidentiality. Please tell us, why do you think you have these qualities?
I mean, I think it's a part of, being a CPA. It is to know that, that's private information, and it shouldn't be by any means chatty Cathy or sharing that. It's really about the professionalism of being a CPA and being able to get that information and not make any judgment on it, but to also be objective in the facts and to keep that information confidential. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Vice Mayor Carr?
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Henderson, thanks for applying for the job. It's good to see you're excited to be here. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've just got a couple questions. I'll go rapid fire. I don't really need long-winded answers. I mean, the quicker the better. Straightforward is good with me. So this position reports directly to 5 bosses. Can you tell me a little bit about your reporting structure in the past, where you're at today, and how do you feel comfortable having 5 different bosses?
I do, absolutely. I would say that, my reporting style is to speak with each of you to find out what's the best communication source for you at that. So if it's either in the morning, having an insight to your actual schedule and knowing what you prefer. If it's either a phone call, an email, whatever it may be, I am ultimately here to ensure that, in essence, to help all of you, to make your jobs easier as well. I want to be able to come in here it's just that, it's the communication, figuring that out.
Have you reported to a board before, or is this the first time you'd be reporting
This
directly
would
to
be
a
the
board?
first time reporting to the board, but I do have experience of being on the board for Hillsborough County's internal audit.
Got it. So I appreciate your answer. I think you did a great job putting a positive spin on having a lot of different jobs for a short period of time. Can you just be a little more real about why the reasons were to jump? I mean, it's great that you got some great experience, but it doesn't seem that was necessarily the intention. And then secondly, you've got a nice gap in 2018. And then also, I'm not sure if you're currently working at Hillsborough County. So if you could just let me know about those couple things as well.
I mean, I really meant, everything that I said. I look at my career, and it's really, without a doubt, if I was in your position, I'd question it as well. But I still stand by what I said. It's ultimately the experience that I wanted to gain is to be in this position specifically. So, I mean, I know that it was a long-winded explanation, but it is the truth.
Okay. So, I mean, was your goal just to get to a director position, and is that why you jumped around so much?
No. Like I said, when I was at MetLife, I was really content about being there until the end. But with a very large corporate audit department, that can take 30 years, or 20 years at best. So I knew that I could gain that experience over the years, but would it really be of value to just wait 20 years? And again, like I said, I want to be here. There is not a question in my mind. I don't look at this as a job. I look at this as a career with the city.
Sure. So, so the June 18 to December 18, was that just like you traveled, or did you have a job then at that point? Just out of curiosity.
I traveled.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you currently work for Hillsborough County today, or is that?
I do not. And that's the whole, like I said, working with the county, from being told that I would have a leadership opportunity, and that was not there. I felt almost in a way slighted, but moving past that, it wasn't that. It was ultimately that we weren't doing audit work, and that's my career. That's what I'm passionate about. So.
Okay. Can you provide a couple examples that you've exposed in an audit that has been beneficial to the organization that you're working for? You don't have to get into the details specifically to expose anybody, but just share a high level.
My style is really being able to think outside the box. In my due diligence with preparing for this, I looked at the comprehensive annual financial statements, and the city is doing very, very well. And I want to add to that. And I think being as, if I was fortunate to get this position, I need to be mindful of thinking of the bigger picture of, if I make a recommendation in the audit report, is it going to be very cost burdensome or a lot of time for the departments to work? It's really be able to think outside the box and provide solutions that are cost effective as well as to the organization's benefit.
Okay. So I think my question, though, a little bit more in detail is, have you exposed any, can you give a couple examples of where you have actually exposed something that was found in an audit, or has it just been status quo during audits that you've completed?
Oh, no. When I think of exposed, there has never been anything where we discovered fraud by any means, but throughout our audits, there's always something that, more likely than not, that you can be able to provide a recommendation of either improving processes or finding inefficiencies and helping management ultimately be able to help them through the process.
Understand. So I know there's a lot of different personalities out there. How do you work with difficult personalities or something along those lines? You're going to be working with a lot of different people that aren't really interested with having you in their back prodding around necessarily. Maybe they'll be glad that you're there, but I just, from my experience in the internal control at my job, it's typically a nuisance when I've got internal control bouncing around. So
absolutely. I think this is, Ms. Mayor Carr, I think this is a really important question. And I would say that, at times as an auditor, like you said as well, we're perceived to almost be like a nuisance, or we're just here to call people out or point out how certain people are doing things, that they could be doing better. My view is this: it is imperative to this position to come in as a team member and to add value. Ultimately, I'm here to help management, provide them the tools and the resources to do their job to the best of their ability. And I think having that mentality and being able to really just spend that time with them, at that point, that's where you start dissolving those stereotypes that we are a team here. I'm only here to help this organization already achieve what
Sure.
it is, greatness.
yeah, thank you. What are your expectations for a work week?
Yeah. I know for a fact, this is not a 40-hour work week. Specifically having to develop an internal audit department from scratch is quite a task and a feat. So I am fully committed to doing, a lot of late nights, early mornings to this. And I think I have also done that all throughout my career as well. So I'm really used to doing those, a lot of work in each week. So
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
Do you enjoy being proactive or reactive?
Proactive.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely.
What's the most that what's the thing that you enjoy most about auditing? If there's a certain category, is there a certain area?
It's the relations.
Okay.
It's the relations, but again, ultimately knowing that through all the hard work and dedication, it helps people. It makes a difference.
Are you aware what the pay scale is on the salary?
I am, yes.
Okay. Are you comfortable with what's listed?
I am, yes.
So you mentioned you watched a couple of meetings.
Yes.
Can you just touch a little bit more on your experience on the benefit that you brought to the team during your audits? Just in a little more detail. It doesn't really matter which, if you're Hillsborough, I mean, let's focus on Hillsborough County, or
that's-
even with when
Yeah.
you work for the consultant with Crow.
As the benefit that I brought to the team or to management?
Let's go with it to the team and to the client. I guess, I mean, Hillsborough County would be the client and Crow would be whoever you're working for at the time, right?
I'd say my mentality as a team, as working at Hillsborough County was, again, we're all in this together. So if I saw another team member, having to stay later, I felt that it was only right to obviously come in and to help them, constantly asking, hey, do you need help? What can that's who I am as an individual. So really, I would say a team player. I think the question was with Crow as well.
Yeah. I mean, what benefit did you bring to the clients that you guys had? I mean, during the audit process,
It was, I was able to really, again, think outside the box and to come up with solutions, either even on the team to ensure that we met our deadlines, but to also help management as well with developing certain processes and controls that really added value and saved the clients money as well.
got it. Irene or Mark, does this position require someone to move to Tarpon Springs? I can't remember. In the charter.
It is not listed in the resident section. It was proposed as charter officials in the language that was voted on when we had the charter questions, but that failed. That question was the only one that failed. So,
Okay. All right.
If I may say this real quick, without a doubt, I live in Tampa now. I would move here if I got this position in a heartbeat. I want to be obviously close to the city, but again, to be in a place that is so rich in culture and diversity. I think Tarpon Springs is a very beautiful city, to say the least. But currently with my parents' health, that is the only thing that's actually limiting me from moving to the city.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate that. I'm done,
Thank
Mayor.
you. Commissioner Terrapini, can you hear us?
I'm here, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay, great. I appreciate y'all, first and foremost, giving me the opportunity to be here tonight via Zoom. So thank you to the board for granting that ask. Mr. Henderson, I appreciate you coming tonight, and I've reviewed your application, which to me is substantial regarding experience. You mentioned that you spent some time on MetLife. I'm assuming that's when you were employed with PwC.
Now, when I was with MetLife, I was an internal auditor to MetLife Corporate. And when I was with PwC, I was actually the contractor to gain the experience of doing IT audits, internal audits.
So in your application, I don't think you said anything about MetLife in your application. That was just something that you mentioned, correct?
Well, I believe MetLife is mentioned in there.
Is it? I'm looking
Resume.
at it. Do you see it there, Vice Mayor? I don't see it.
You looking at the application or the resume?
His application.
Okay.
Well, in either case,
Oh,
am I misunderstanding?
Sorry. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
That's within the application. It only had a field to include a certain amount of jobs. So within my resume, it is included.
I got you. So I don't have the resume in front of me right now. So Tell me a little bit about MetLife and your role there.
MetLife was a great organization to work for, to say the least. Very professional. And again, that's where I learned a lot of the critical factors to be able, or of a successful internal audit department. While I was there, I actually spearheaded the SOX testing for their entire balance sheet certification process, which I think had like $1.6 billion. And I had a team as well that helped me lead that engagement to test all of those controls. That's where I also learned other things such as, how to properly conduct a walkthrough of a control process, as well as, initially writing and drafting a report.
And your official role at MetLife was what? Audit director?
I was a senior internal auditor.
Senior internal, gotcha. Okay. And then Vice Mayor, I think you answered my question regarding the residency. So there's no requirement, if I understand that right. Is that right, Irene?
That is correct.
Okay. I don't have many other questions for you, Mr. Henderson. I appreciate your interest in Tarpon Springs and you making the application. I think you have the qualifications and I appreciate your responses. I think you've handled the questions from the board pretty well to this point. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Commissioner Donovan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for being here tonight. I know it's a really stressful job interview process. It's one of the most unique ones I've seen or heard of. The fact that it's public, you got to be here. I really appreciate you coming out. The board's asked a lot of great questions so far, so I lost a lot off my list. But my first one is just what's your best professional accomplishment? What's something that you look back on and you can point to and say, I really made a difference with this organization, or I really made a difference here because of X, Y, Z.
I think it's the major accomplishments that I had was really being able to build the relationships quickly with the people that I was auditing. For example, when I was with Hillsborough County, I was in charge or a part of the budget review audit when I did consulting work for the county. And just from that experience, the director of that department, him and I had definitely a positive relationship. And that's where he saw my experience, my dedication to the engagement, as well as my ability to really bring out the best of his employees. So I thought it was very important to include, I thought it'd be very important to get a letter of recommendation from him. So from the limited experience that I've had with him, he did not, without a doubt, hesitate to write me a letter of recommendation. In addition to the director of fleet management at Hillsborough County, where I was able to, I'd say in the recent, going back to your question, the accomplishment, being able to think outside the box and save his department $30,000 by being able to develop a reporting tool internally so they didn't have to go to their vendor to pay that money. I think that's huge. And, I'm happy with that, again, to help the organization.
Thank you. Yeah, and that kind of bleeds into my next question of just if you wouldn't mind expanding on your day-to-day responsibilities at the Hillsborough County office.
Yeah, my day-to-day responsibilities was really to write the audit programs. And the audit program really outlines the objective of the overall audit, the scope, so the time period that you're going to be focusing, and then into detail the specific steps. So to be able to do that, you have to have the experience and having meetings and having with the process owners to get their policies and procedures. So the audit program is really that key part. And I actually, and the folder that I provided, I actually wrote an audit program or a review program for the city of Tarpon Springs, and that's to review the cash collection process. Because right now, or without doing a full risk assessment process, I know from my experience, cash is the biggest risk of any entity. So again, doing that time, but going back to your question, writing the audit programs, doing the testing as well. It's a very small department. So I was really, doing all the high level stuff, but then also doing the work, which what really attracts me to this position as well is I don't want to be a director at a company to where I'm just telling people what to do. I actually want to be doing the work And that is something that is so unique with this position. And that's why I also have developed all those policies and procedure, the audit plan, the charter, the review program, because I like doing that. I know that and I am 100% about that. So in a way, hopefully I've answered
Yeah,
your
no,
question.
it absolutely does. And I really appreciate the effort. I saw the packet. I've been reading through it. I really am impressed by that. So do you have personal experience developing an internal audit manual and calendar?
Yes, I do. So when I was at Jabil, again, I went there to really gain that leadership experience, and really what that entails is performing the risk assessment process. And that then leads to what audits will be performed during the given year. So from the risk assessment process, you identify the high risk issues that the organization is facing, and then you develop the actual audit plan for the entity. So I have done all that, and that's where it takes time to develop all those, which I have for this organization. But again, it's from my experience that I've had in the past.
And what did you do as a board member of Hillsborough's Internal Audit Committee? What does that entail?
Yeah, so that's ensuring that the department is obviously doing what they say they should be doing. So the engagements and learning about new risk in the process. And I think one of the valuable things that I learned from that is, on that board, they had other people that didn't have audit experience. So it was a fresh reminder from hearing the department, or the director speak, and somebody potentially saying, I'm not really sure what that means. So it's having that mindset of the audience and who you're speaking to. So that's one of the things that I've learned as being a board member that directly relates to this position, that, I'm speaking publicly to people that might not have audit experience. So I need to kind of say things that are very, not complex, or use my standard auditing terminologies.
And is there anything not on your resume or that you haven't had a chance to tell us about yourself tonight that you'd like to?
Commissioner Donovan, I am so happy you asked about that. In my undergrad at USF, I saw an opportunity and a need to help people with disabilities. And that's where I was the founder and president of an organization named Project Able. And it was a very small yet effective organization where we were able to raise thousands of dollars each semester and donate that money to Tampa Bay Lighthouse for the Blind. And that is, again, the biggest takeaway that I had from that experience is being able to make an impact in the community and to help people in need. And again, there's two things that I'm passionate about: auditing and helping people. And again, this position brings that. And I know from my experience from that, it was a very small organization, but ultimately had a positive impact, a big positive impact. And I know that this department, in my vision as well, would be the same. Very small department, but a huge impact to the city, to the community, and to the residents. Thank you so much for asking.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. That's fantastic. My last question is just if you have any questions for myself or the board as it pertains to the position or working within the city.
I do have several questions. Is it okay?
I guess it's up to the mayor. Mayor, do you want to finish with our commission questions?
We have one more commission that we need to go, and then we
Oh,
can.
yeah, absolutely.
cover that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You finished, Commissioner? Commissioner Tiquiotis.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Henderson, your resume speaks for itself as far as your qualifications. And that's why you and the other applicant are here. You've already been deemed to be qualified for the position, but I want to make sure you're the right person for this position. So I'm going to be asking you some questions just to see, just to make sure that we cut to the chase on some of the things that you said tonight and some of the things that I see in your application. For me, I just have some questions in my mind. In preparing, and I also read your document in the back with your ideas and thoughts as far as the internal auditor position. Do you know how many employees you're going to have as an internal auditor here?
One myself.
Okay. And Have you read any documents, financial documents that the city has?
I have. At a high level, I've read the comprehensive annual financial report. And by doing that, specifically, I looked at the internal controls. The external auditor will write a report about the actual city's internal controls with financial reporting. And there's a very important part of that, which is if there were any deficiencies or any material weaknesses noted. And thankfully, there haven't been any. In addition to that, I think that document is about 173 or 174 pages. So there's a lot of information, but the key parts that I read was that, as well as the services that the city provides with the enterprise fund, as well as with the internal service funds, like what departments that comprised of, because that really helps me understand where there might be potential risks, specifically with the internal service funds. And then also, finally, it's that, this city, looking at the net positions, it increased, I think, $2.2 million, and that's on trend over the years. So it really speaks volume that this city is financially healthy. And I think that, again, is kudos to the board and the management and budget department as well.
Can you just be very specific? What documents have you actually looked at?
Of the actual,
Just list them without explaining all the details. I think we all know what they are.
it's just that document,
Which,
the comprehensive annual financial report.
okay, that's the CAFR.
Yes, correct.
Okay, have you looked at the budget at all?
I have not. No, I have
Okay.
not. And that's,
um,
and if I may say, within the audit plan that I proposed, that would be part of the initial onboarding process to really be able to dive deeper into the financials and that. Because I mean, there is a ton of things, and I do agree with you that is a very important thing. But I have also spent the time, preparing the other documents. But I do
Okay.
agree with
Do you know
yes.
who's been doing our audits before you and the other applicant?
I do not. I have not. I knew that it was to what matters to me is that there has been an external auditor that's the value. I think it's at that point, obviously it's the major thing is that there has been an audit. That's the real value at that.
Okay. When you started out, you gave your address as Cortez Drive. In your application, it's got it as Gretna Green Drive. Which one is it?
It's so that is actually, I live with my girlfriend now, and it is 3802. So that one, but I listed the other address, my parents' address, because if there is any mail, they're always on top of it, and they let me know if anything comes in. I'm sorry
Okay.
about that.
But
But to be honest,
But both are in Tampa? Is that
yes,
correct?
correct,
Okay.
yes.
I wanted to ask you some questions concerning your previous employment that is a little more specific. I noticed you've listed in your resume quite a few accomplishments over that 12-month period. How many operational audits did you accomplish in that 12-month period?
So it was really the operational audit that I was in charge of was fleet management. And that audit was a very big audit, to say the least. I think it was over like 750 hours. There were other things that I've also worked on that have been quick engagements when I was at Hillsborough County, which was being a part of the animal service, reviewing their policies and procedures as well, and doing consulting work with the utilities department.
Okay, so basically one operational audit?
Yeah, it is that one operational audit, yes.
And in Price Waterhouse, you did a number of different sort of things, but mostly from a consultant perspective. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I came in and what I did there was to actually review PwC's own internal controls with, HR and payroll. So again, it's kind of what I would also be doing here is looking at the controls of the organization at a whole.
Okay. The one thing that I saw that you listed for Price Waterhouse is $65 an hour, which just a normal work week comes out to about $120,000, $130,000 per year. And then you left to gain more experience in that, and you went to a job that paid $90,000. Were you actually making $120,000?
As a contractor, I was being paid $65 an hour. And at that point, it wasn't, money is great and all, but that's not what motivates me. So I did take a significant pay cut, but again, to work for Pinellas County. But again, it was doing something that I was passionate about for working as an entity that also ultimately helped the community and its people. So that's why some people might say it's crazy, but again, money is important, but it's not the thing that solely motivates me.
Okay, and then your experience with Hillsborough County in 2018, that 2-month period was mostly as a contractor?
Yes, I was a consultant. Like I said before, when I worked at Jabil, and that's when I also was on the board for Hillsborough County. So I knew from making that transition from the private sector to public is really career-wise, it's a big jump. And that's again where I wanted to at least test the waters. Because again, it seems that the concern, at this point in my career, I know what I want and I don't want to be jumping anymore. So again, it's through that experience, it's being more cautious with the decisions that I make.
And in Jabil, you started out at $95,000 and your last salary was $120,000.
That is correct, yes.
And you left there to get a better work-life balance, is that?
As well, yeah. I was doing about 75-hour work weeks every single week, and that was not going to change.
Was that an hourly rate or that you were?
No, I was.
That was your salary, your annual
standard
salary?
40 hours, but I mean, I was without a doubt doing 75 hours every single week. And that's the thing, it's not about the hours, because I know that this position, really being able to start an internal audit department from the ground up is going to take a ton of work. And I left Jabil, it wasn't because of the hours. It's because I realized that I wanted to work for an entity that served the public as a civil servant.
Right. And for MetLife, I didn't get a salary there because you don't have it listed in your application.
I'm trying to, I think I probably came in at like 65 or 70. And then over the years, it went up to, with bonus, like 75, maybe a little bit more. But I would have to, I think that's what it was.
Okay. And as far as just in general between these, I guess, 5 really employers, since it looks like 2015 over the last, actually 2012, which is about 8 years. How much actual auditing did you actually do? Operational audits, risk management, comprehensively. Can you give us a number on that?
Yeah, I mean, auditing is, risk analysis from day one, coming out and, starting as an intern to staff to a senior. That is, that has always been my background, to be able to identify risks. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Well, in terms of the number of operational audits,
yeah,
would you
operational audits. So being an external auditor, you don't really you focus on the financial statements. So when I went to MetLife, that's when I was part of more so doing the testing controls and making sure that controls were properly designed as well. I'd say that my actual experience for managing operational audits was part at MetLife, leading those engagements such as the balance sheet certification, but especially at Jabil. I mean, that was about extensively what I was doing. One engagement, or yeah, just that. It was the majority of my time at Jabil was doing operational audits. And then I'd say my time at Hillsborough County was doing operational audits as well. So for, let's say, more than collectively 3.5 or 4 years.
Did you do, the reason why I asked you about the number of employees, you are going to be the only employee, you know that.
Yes,
And so, I mean, it's interesting to deal with the financials all the time, but there's a lot of other things that internal auditors for at least a city this size has that doesn't deal with financials. Bean counting in terms of inventories, looking at how much something was purchased and how much we have left and where did that material go and that sort of thing. And I'm just, and because of that, you have to be somewhat creative in how you approach it. And I see most of your experience has been with dealing with financials, I believe, and risk management, control, compliance sort of thing in one form or another within that operational auditing framework, if you will. And have you done anything from the sort of thing that I mentioned to you as far as non-financial auditing?
Yeah, so I have. I'd say that's more about half of my career is not the financial aspect of it. I really think that the financial aspect of my experience was when I was an external auditor, because that's really as an external auditor, what you're doing is looking at the balances that are stated, and ensuring that those are right. So from MetLife to Jabil to Hillsborough County, those have really been processes, and in a way, not so much focused on the balance sheet or the financial systems, but are the controls in place? Are there efficiencies within the processes? Does it make sense? Are people actually following the written procedures or not? So I'd say that, yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Have you developed any measures of effectiveness of any of your audits? Or were they simply given to you that this is what you want to look at and this is the measure of effectiveness that we want you to do?
None of my audits have been where it was given to me. It's really within the process of, again, the first part is from the risk assessment process of sitting down with all of the directors of the departments and identifying where the risks are, and then going at that point and saying, this is like the biggest risk that the entity is facing. Let's go in and look at this specific process. And then at that point, part of the field work or the initial part is really be able to sit with them, get the insight of what they say they're doing, and then also the policies and procedures. And then it's the support to show either that they are following it or not. So I think
Right, there's a number of things that happen here at the city. For example, we purchase new vehicles rather than keeping old ones for a very long time because of the maintenance. And that justification is provided to us by the city manager through his different departments and things. We've just been taking that information at face value. We don't know whether it's I don't want to call it realistic or justified, or whether it's based on anything for sure. So those are the sort of things you're going to get into that are not really dollars and cents strictly. And you're not going to find that in the CAFR either.
Without a doubt. And to exactly what you're talking about is, you've been, like you said, taking it at face value for the time. With my experience with working with counties and cities, is there is actually a guide that says this is the average life of, let's say, 7 years for or they have lightweight trucks, heavyweight, it's broken down by each of those categories of saying that this is the expected life of these units. So to really, if that was an audit that you would like me to do, I know how to do that. And that's really being able to get that guide, the general guide of saying, this is how long this certain type of truck should be kept, and pulling a sample and saying, well, they're keeping trucks either a lot shorter, they're turning over. Why is that so? Is it that, the management, their employees are, really beating them up? Is that an issue? Or is it because, it's just the heavy use of the vehicles for having to go through certain terrain? So okay. I can definitely, I know how to do that, and I can review that process or audit that.
And have you, other than these 5 employers, was there one of these that you had experience in doing that?
I would say, again, all of them really are, is through the process, it's identifying the first, just like any question, if each of you were asking me, just like you said, I know how to objectively take the standard, the guidance of what is kind of like a best practice, and then see what the department is doing, and then, seeing if that aligns with best practices, as well as does the department's own policies and procedures also align with what they say they're doing. I would like to, obviously pull a sample and see the support. So I have all that experience. I can do that without a doubt.
Thank you. I just have a couple of more questions.
Absolutely.
I always find it interesting when I ask people, charter officials, whether they've got one boss or whether they've got 5 bosses. I'm not going to ask you that question because I don't think it's a fair question, because my stance has always been you've got one boss, which is the collective city commission. Others think that they've got 5 individual bosses. So that's going to be up to you as far as how you deal with that. You're going to be dealing with the city manager who works directly for the city commission, and you're going to be working directly for the city commission. Can you describe to us how you plan on doing that so that you continue getting, the most that we can do is tell you you've got access to all the departments and the information and the records. How welcome you're going to be is a different matter. And I do have experience with our former internal auditor some time ago. And I won't say that was I'm not going to tell you it's going to be a real easy thing to do, because it's not. And, but nevertheless, I wouldn't want an internal auditor that's going to be coming to the commission, every other day because somebody won't let them in the door, or the door's been locked for a week and they can't get the information they need, and sort of thing. We need to have somebody that can actually work and constructively, rather than pursuing this from a gotcha sort of perspective. And that's very important to me. So how can you describe to the commission how you intend to do that to avoid these sort of problems?
I think it's my approach that, making those relations with, the directors of the department, to really help them understand that we're here, our internal audit is here to help them. So if somebody is not, and it's going back, I don't want to be coming, I would never come to you and say, hey, I can't get this record. I have the experience to be able to go through multiple sources. First of all, if I wasn't getting the support that I needed, the first step is, go to either that person's manager. If they're not helping, then it's to escalate that to the next level, and then to the next level, to the next level. The last thing that I want to be doing, again, because I know all of you have such a finite amount of time and so many things on your plate. So I do not want to burden you by any means. I want to effectively use my experience that I have. And I think that I am very, it's also this, it's being able to find what motivates people. Because if you run into an obstacle, it's finding out, how that person takes to be able to, to ultimately help you, or it's like, hey, we got to do this because it's for the greater good of the department, or, it will ultimately help you do your job better or make your life easier. So there's, again, so many resources that I've learned over the years and through all those departments to really have a lot of experience with a lot of different people and types of personalities. So hopefully that answered your question.
I think that's fine. I just want to make sure I've got everything covered. I think it's just, okay, I think, let me just double check. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, do you have any closing statements?
My closing statement is And to me, this isn't a job, it's a career. It's a career with the city of Tarpon. It's a career with the community. It's a career with the residents. Again, I realized through all my experience, this is where I want to be. This is such a unique opportunity to be a part of something that's great, which is the city, but to also be able to bring in my own experience and dedication as an auditor to help and equally contribute to that greatness. I think it is, yeah, this is really an opportunity of a lifetime, and I would be here indefinitely. I think that's
That's it.
That's-
Thank you.
uh,
Are there any other commission comments to Mr. Henderson?
I had a couple questions I meant to ask, but I forgot. Is it okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Are you applying for any other positions right now, or is this the one you're targeting, or what are you doing?
I'm so glad you asked that question. There's been nobody else. This came up and I was so excited that I literally ran to my girlfriend and said, this is it. This is everything that I've worked for and has every check mark in my box. So ultimately, no, I haven't. There has been other opportunities that, great opportunities that have came up since I've applied several months ago, and it doesn't matter. This is where I want to be. I have really put
Got it.
yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, you're good. I think Commissioner Donovan had a question earlier for you pertaining, do you have any questions for us as a commission? I'm not sure if the mayor would be open for that.
Well, you got 5 members here. How many questions? We're here to interview the person, not interview us.
Okay.
Go ahead. Do you have something that you want to ask that is in
It
particular?
was just more so just a general question, and it was, what are the ideal attributes or characteristics of a city employee here? Like, what would you like them to have?
Would you give us an example?
Yeah, if it's either dedication or if it's commitment or if it's, being timely or professional, it would be anything like that.
All the above.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate this, and this is truly an amazing opportunity. And
Ms. Niffen, we're going to take about 5 minutes break before you bring the other applicant, please.
Works for me. Yeah, your mask.
We now reconvene the BOC special session, and the time is 7:53 PM. Ms. Niffen?
Just going across the street to get the person.
Ms. Niffen, would you please bring candidate number 2?
No, she's doing,
Huh?
she's getting her.
Excuse me.
Good evening, Ms. Kessel. Would you please state your name and your address for the record?
Yes, good evening. My name is Monica Kessel, and you asked me to state my address,
Yes, for the record.
7853 Romadoon Drive, that's in Wesley Chapel, Florida.
Thank you. We'd like to welcome you to Colorado Springs. I want to thank you for applying for the internal auditor position. If you please take a few minutes and tell us about yourself and your qualifications and your expertise in this field.
Yes, thank you for having me. I look forward to speaking with each of you this evening. As I stated, my name is Monica Kessel. I have been in the internal audit field at my current employer for 12 years at this point. Prior to that, I've been in internal audit in 2 other industries, logistics and healthcare, for a total of close to 20 years in internal audit. So I'm not a career auditor because I've had positions that were on the other side of the table, per se. I've been in accounting and finance. And in that capacity, I've also been employed in a county position in Citrus County at their hospital here in Florida. So I actually know what it feels like to sit on both sides of the table, being audited or being the auditor, and talking with my clients. I'm a CIA. I have a CFE. I'm a CCEP, which is a certification in compliance and ethics. I have a CRMA, which is a certification in risk management assurance, and also a CICA, which is the certification in internal control auditing.
Thank you. Your resume shows that you're very qualified in your field, and your job history shows that you are a very stable and consistent employee. You're working for St. Leo University for 12 years as a director of internal audit. Why do you want to leave St. Leo University to come to Tarpon Springs?
I love St. Leo University. I got my master's at St. Leo University prior to working for them. And having that exposure, I really fell in love with the institution and their mission. So this isn't about being unhappy with my current employer. I started at St. Leo University in the accounting department. The accounting department had been completely revamped and an entirely new team was brought in 2008. I was part of that new team. The controller hired me. After being in that capacity for 8 months, I was offered to start the internal audit department at the university. I had had previous internal audit experience and I had been at that point very proficient in what I was doing for the university. So I was offered the position to be the director of internal audit and start their internal audit department. That was one of the most exciting things in my career that I've done, is start this internal audit department. I loved building it from the ground up. It became at one point a department of 3 employees. My third employee recently left for other employment, so we are now a department of 2. And I also started an internship program. So why am I looking to leave the university? I feel like I've done everything I can possibly do there. I don't feel like I can advance any further. I have started the department. It's running efficiently. I have taken it through 2, we call it QAR. It stands for a quality assurance review. It's part of the internal audit standards that we follow. They require it every 5 years. So in 2014 was the very first one. And if you're wondering, well, why is this such a big deal? It answers the question, who audits the audit department? Auditors run around and audit everybody else and write these reports and make recommendations. But then when you're the audit client, you sit back and say, but wait a minute, whoever looks at your records, how do we know? How do the commissioners and the board know that what you're doing is in conformance to standards? The quality assurance review, or the QAR, answers that question, and it's a standard that's done every 5 years. You bring in an external team and have that done. So in 2014 was the 5-year mark for St. Leo University, and I passed the QAR with the highest opinion I could receive. It was a gigantic feather in my cap. And then in 2019 was again the 5-year mark. By that time, my senior auditor had retired. I had hired a new one, again, keeping the department running proficiently. By that time in 2019, we were a department of 3, and again, receiving the highest opinion. I feel like I've done everything I can possibly do for St. Leo at this point in time. When I saw the opportunity here to start an internal audit function, it just brings back the joy for 2 years of just starting something new and getting to know people and interacting with the board and senior leadership and modifying reports so it works for the audience in the best way possible. So why am I looking to leave? I love St. Leo. I'm not unhappy with my position there at all, but I'm looking for an opportunity to bring back that excitement that I feel like I haven't had in a few years.
Thank you. Would you please tell us, how do you plan to develop an internal audit department in the city of Tarpon Springs? It's only one person.
So at St. Leo, I started as a 1-person department. It didn't start as a 2 or 3-person department. It started as a 1-person department. So I've been there, done that. So one of the first things I do is beg, borrow, and steal anything that I can get in terms of resources to start for developing processes, developing the charter, both a board or a commissioner charter for what the auditor is authorized to do, and then an internal audit charter for what the auditor can do throughout the organization. And then even it goes further into even developing the template programs and reports that you're going to use. And my reports have been modified over the years to work better and better and better for the culture and the organization that I'm in. The same thing would happen here. One report, the format may not be attractive or it may not be received as well. So you make these modifications. So you spend that initial time frame doing all of that. What I also do is perform the first risk assessment that Tarpon Springs would have. That risk assessment would involve a lot of interview meetings with senior leadership as well as the board to find out and take that pulse. What are the risks? What are the concerns? Where should the internal auditor be spending their time? So putting all of that together and then reporting back and getting that feedback back is the way that I would start developing that. I would also ask the board to consider initially approving a few small scope audits so that I can get my feet wet and start running so that folks can see me in my environment, in my professional environment of working as an auditor and starting to get those reports out so they can see, oh, so this is what this process is going to look like and feel like with having small scope projects. We might call them low-hanging fruit audits. There's not a lot of risk to it, but it gets the traction going for the department.
Thank you. How comfortable are you giving your best advice when you know that some, or including your supervisors, in this case, you have the Board of Commissioners that may not like it? How comfortable are you to present that?
Well, nobody's, I would say, absolutely comfortable when they know there's going to be some adversity or some tension. However, I believe strongly in my ethics and doing the right thing. If there's risk being taken on by the organization that is not appropriate, I know what my job is, and my job is to report that back to my board, my reporting entity, and do it in a factual, clear manner. My opinion should only ever be based on the facts that I've been provided and what I've researched. And all of that, I think, helps mitigate some of that stress. I don't know if your microphone went off. Hopefully, all of that will help mitigate some of that stress and tension that will occur in that communication. The other thing that I do is where I am right now at St. Leo University, the board is large. It's over 30 members. So I report and interact with a subcommittee called the Audit Committee. So when there are things that come up that have high tension or a lot of energy or are going to be, what I do is I schedule a meeting with that subcommittee and talk with them about it and say, okay, where are we? This is what I know. This is what I'm finding out. This is what I'm hearing. And they may be able to share some information with me. They may not be able to share some information with me, but I also use them to guide me in terms of how do you want me to proceed with this? Because ultimately I work for them. Did that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. You have many years of experience as an auditor in a learning institution and in the medical field. Do you have any experience in the local government?
Not as an auditor in a local government. My experience at the county, Citrus County, was in the accounting department, and I was responsible for accounting and budgeting there. We did not actually have an audit department in Citrus County at that time.
Did you have the opportunity to look and see if there's any difference between the learning institutions and the local government? Do you have the opportunity to look and see?
Yes, there are actually a great deal of similarities. Most higher ed institutions have set up their financials that mimic a government setup because many, I would say 70% of higher ed institutions are actually part of a government entity. All of the state institutions in Florida are technically part of the state of Florida. So their books, their records, the way that they encumber funds, the way that they handle their budgets, all mimics what would happen in the state system. And since most of higher ed functions that way, St. Leo also functions that way. We use the same systems that all other higher ed institutions use, and we function in that same way with encumbering funds and having the set aside for what can be used from year to year. So I will not profess to be an expert in government operations, but I would say that I'm comfortable with it.
Thank you. Ms. Kessler, that's all I have. I want to ask Vice Mayor Carr
Okay.
to ask his questions.
Thanks, Mayor. Ms. Kessel, thank you for being here tonight and applying for our internal auditor position. Quick question, when you hear of Tarpon Springs, what comes to mind and what's your view of Tarpon Springs?
So I've lived in Florida almost 20 years. Tarpon Springs was one of the first places that was suggested that I go and explore. So it not only is a wonderful town, city, I think of it more of as a town, I guess, because it's not large, but the sponge docks. I love Greek food. I love shopping in the shops. So to answer your question, that's really what I think of when I think of Tarpon Springs. I think of the tourism aspect, the aquarium, the seafood restaurants. I love Rusty Bellies, and
Great.
So that's what I think of.
Great, thanks. I've got some other questions, but I just want to go through like some of the bullet points in your St. Leo career.
Sure.
So it says report functionality to the audit committee, and that's a group of how many that you report to?
Currently, it is a group of 6 board members.
Okay.
So they are a group of the board. So I technically report to the board, but I do so through that committee.
Okay. And you understand the reporting structure here that you're reporting directly to the Board of Commission? Okay. So I'm just trying to understand how this, it seems like a unique situation of your position at St. Leo. Manage organization's ethics hotline, perform investigations. That's just part of, that's not really typical for an internal audit director, right?
It actually is fairly typical. So St. Leo has a hotline. We call it the ethics hotline, but it would be a hotline that anybody could use to report like fraud, waste, abuse, a violation of policy. And so we use a third party for that. So when the employee makes the report, it goes to the third party. So we've got a contract with a third party, the toll-free number and the website, the report itself goes to the third party. Once that third party receives the report, it comes to me then. We have a process of how it comes in, but it comes to me through an email. It notifies me that there's been a report. I log in to the software. I look at the report. Based on the allegation, I call it a triage. I look at the type of allegation, and then based on that, I route it accordingly where it may need to go to be investigated. So, for example, if it's an HR or human resources related matter, my supervisor and I aren't getting along, or my supervisor said this or that, that's going to go to HR. I'm not going to handle HR investigations. I'm not an HR expert. That's not my expertise to handle. But if it's about financials, fraud, policy violation, that would be something that internal audit would then handle, and we would perform that investigation. If it crosses the line into something that's legal, I then get our general counsel involved. So the report may not necessarily be handled by internal audit, but the hotline itself is managed by internal audit.
I understand. That makes sense.
Okay.
I appreciate you clarifying that for me. Manage, outsource, and co-source third-party providers. What does that mean?
So we're a small audit department. This would be a small audit department. So if there's an audit that comes up that I don't have the expertise to do, for example, IT, I'm not an IT auditor. So if I need to do an IT audit, I need to get a firm or somebody that has that expertise, a subject matter expert, if you will, to come in and then work with me. I prefer co-source arrangements. So what that is you're still bringing in a firm or a subject matter expert, but within the contract, there's knowledge transfer and knowledge sharing going on. So I'm actually performing part of the work with them. I'm not just bringing them in and say, go over there and look at IT and let me know what you find out. I go with them so that I am learning, so that I can perform follow-up and I can perform some basic IT, learn some basic IT skills that I can then incorporate in my future audits.
How does that work from like yeah, I appreciate you. That's really interesting. I would never have guessed that. So like, what do they charge or something like that? Is it like a per hour basis, or you have a per diem or a set amount that you can't go over $10,000 or $5,000, or What would that look like?
Well, it certainly would depend upon the subject matter expert that you're bringing in. So for example, I have used IT experts, I have used construction experts, and I have also used marketing experts because none of this is my expertise. And so when we want to get into a scope that involves that. With the marketing, that was the lowest cost one. We had a pretty wide range of firms and subject matter experts to look at. And that ended up being really more of an hourly rate because it was a local consultant that we used. For the construction and the IT, we ended up doing a scope of work contract. So we developed the scope and then they performed the work. I mean, I performed the work with them and they would actually provide, in many cases, the audit program, help me or teach me how to do the steps or teach my staff how to do the steps so that we're learning along the way. And those were fixed price contracts with a do not exceed built into it.
Okay. Assisted in education department with state grant documentation and report submission. So did you work with applying for state grants? Is that correct?
Yes, there's specific documentation. So whenever the university applies for a grant, I didn't write the grant, but the financial piece of it that they needed, I prepared that. And then once the grant was approved, I was also the one who would then prepare the financial piece for submission. I would gather the paid invoices, and at the time I was doing this, I'll be honest, we were still using checks. And so I would gather the canceled checks and submit all of that, put the package together and submit it to the state to verify that we in fact have used their funds correctly.
Okay. Have you worked with any difficult personalities in the past, and how did you work your way through that project?
Yes. Okay. So in my audit career, I've made many recommendations in audit reports. I have never, and all of the places where I've worked, when I write an audit report and I write a recommendation, there's an area for management or leadership to respond to those findings that we've noted in the report. Never have I had management say that they disagree with the finding. But at St. Leo, in 2012, I had a manager disagree with one of my findings and disagree with the recommendation. It was a pretty tenuous relationship for a while, but I was determined to show him that it's okay. Like, it's okay for me to make a recommendation because I'm not the police. I don't write the law. So you don't have to do what I say, but I want you to understand why I was trying to recommend this and that risk be mitigated in this area. It actually had to do with benchmarking. It was something he actually asked me to do in the middle of the audit to benchmark staffing ratios. I think he thought I was going to find something different. And what I found is that his staffing was actually, they were severely understaffed. And he ended up disagreeing because I wrote a recommendation. Not only should they change the ratios and they should do it progressively over some increment of time. In other words, don't turn around tomorrow and post 50 positions, but do it responsibly, do it over time. And then actually change some of the leadership positions to exempt positions, some of the lower leadership positions in this particular division I was doing the audit. This manager disagreed with it. We went around and around and around. And I was heartbroken. I mean, I was really heartbroken because he asked, this was not originally in the scope of the audit. And I did this for him. But I was determined. So I did everything I could. I would schedule meetings with him. And when I would show up, and get a plate out. Here's a donut for you. Here's a donut for me. Let's sit and chat. And we would sit and chat. I eventually asked him to go to lunch one time, we had a cafeteria on the university campus. So we went there and I started, whenever there were events that involved his area, I would volunteer. I would be a sign-up person or a welcome person. And I think it was about a year and a half later, I finally wore him down and he finally saw me as a human. and not as that nasty auditor who was just really trying to, make this recommendation. And do you know, it was 2 years later in 2014, what did he do? He changed his staffing ratios. So the report doesn't reflect it, but I think through just the persistence and developing the relationship, I think sometimes they just need to see you as a real person.
Sure. Thank you for that. What about from like the board standpoint? I think we're all pretty direct up here on the board. Do you have any struggles with that at all?
I can honestly tell you that my biggest supporters at the university are the board. I'm assuming, like you guys, and this is an assumption, but it was the board who made the decision to have an internal audit department. It was not leadership. The board told leadership, you will have an internal audit department. Unbeknownst to me, I was being hired in March of 2008. The board had made that directive the year before, and leadership was dragging their feet. And then it was October of 2008 is when they were having a board meeting, and they finally said, you have 60 days. You will have an internal audit department. So I don't have a lot of difficult relationships with the board. We've had a lot of consistency with the audit committee. That's specifically the group that I report to of the board. We don't, one board member may change on that committee on a given year, but there's a lot of consistency. So because they were the ones that wanted the internal audit department, they were the ones that ultimately approved hiring me. They're the ones that, that see me all the time. I attend every single meeting. I'm the one who presents to them. We really don't have a lot of difficulty. They are also business people. They are very direct. Some of them are alumni of the school and some are not. They're local business people. So I would say that relationship is probably my strongest relationship.
Okay, great. Thank you. What's your current work hours and what are your expectations for a work week?
So my current, I work Monday through Friday, typically. The university through the pandemic, all non-essential employees, which included internal audit, went remote. So I was able to work remote. So now what the university has done is they've done, you're welcome to go back to the campus, but it's on what they call like a hybrid type of schedule. So now I'm in the office maybe 2 or 3 days a week, and I work at home the other days. But there's no hard, fast rule. And what we generally do is I alternate with my staff auditor. So if he's going to be in the office, then I'm not in the office.
Can I interrupt you? I'm sorry, you're going a different direction real quick. So let's say we're outside of the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
What is your typical work week? I mean, you're coming in at 8 o'clock and out at 4, or what are your thoughts on that?
I work 7 to 4 typically. There are times I might work a little bit over that, or I might need to go in a little bit early, but I'm usually able to work within the 40-hour work week. Every now and then hit 45 hours, but.
All right, great. Thank you. This is just a quick answer. Do you prefer proactive or reactive approaches?
I prefer proactive.
Okay, thank you. Are you aware of the position pay scale that you're applied for?
Yes.
Okay. Are you in agreement with that pay scale?
I would ask to be should the position be offered to me, I would ask to be compensated at the high end of the scale.
Okay. Have you watched any of our board meetings before, or are you like familiar with any of us at all?
I've read your bios, and I know through this process, there was a budgetary committee that did the selection process. If I remember correctly, I think it was 4 candidates. And then ultimately, the person who contacted me from HR said that only 2 were coming. I don't know why the other 2 didn't. But other than that, no, I have not seen any of the city board meetings.
Okay. Let's see. Can you just like quickly in a fast summary, provide a couple examples of how you exposed maybe something in an audit that you weren't expecting, or that you needed to present to the board or present to leadership of something that was, I guess, pretentious. I think that kind of piggybacks on the mayor a little bit on one of his questions. But is there anything that you came across in audit where you're like, whoa,
Yes.
there's an issue here?
I had one audit that we were doing where we identified a theft. We were actually able to verify and identify the theft. We were actually to come up with a dollar amount. And what I immediately did at that point in time is I called a meeting with the president, and I also communicated with the chair of my audit committee. Again, the audit committee is a subgroup of the board, and then there's a chair of that committee, so that I was able to speak with both of them at the same time. So I did report it, and then we had a discussion about whether we continue the audit or whether we take a tangent and go into an investigation specifically on the theft. So that was one example. Another example was a construction project I was auditing where we found miscalculation of $2.3 million. I handled it very, very similarly. Contacted the chair of the audit committee, contacted the president of the university, and in this case, it was also the CFO's responsibility. Construction fell under the CFO, contacted the CFO, had the meeting, went through what we had found, and in that particular case, the decision was made to move forward with the audit and bring in a forensic accountant.
Great. Okay. I appreciate you answering some of the questions I had. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. After a review of your application and with some of the questions the board has already asked you, let me just ask you one particular question. With your background and your experience and knowing what you know about Tarpon Springs and basically what this board is seeking in you, where do you feel like your value add is to our community?
I want to answer your question with a qualifier. I don't fully understand everything that you're looking for. And if I have an opportunity to ask questions, that's part of what I'm going to ask for. So I'm going to answer your question with what I think you're looking for. I mean, I've read the job description and I've read those details, but in terms of personality, management style, those are the things I don't know. But to answer your question, I believe what I bring is extremely high interpersonal skills. I'm personable. I get along well with others. I manage my time well. I meet deadlines. And when I work with those that I'm auditing, I don't even like to call them audit clients per se. I mean, we're coworkers, we're colleagues. We work for the same mission, for the same organization, for the same result. So I really believe strongly that audit is to bring value to an organization, and they can bring value different ways. They can bring value through assurance engagements, which are the traditional audits. They can also bring value through doing advisory and consulting engagements. And those types of engagements are not traditional audits, and many of them are actually requested by leadership and management. And for me, that is a true trademark that audit is in fact bringing value to the organization when management and leadership are actually seeking the auditor out to ask them for their advice and their opinion and their thoughts on something.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Donovan?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here tonight. As I said to the candidate from before, I know it's an uncomfortable process getting up here at a public meeting. So I really appreciate you being here and answering these questions to the best of your ability. My first question is just what's your biggest professional accomplishment that you look back on? I guess, we'll go St. Leo because you've been there a long time, that you can point to and say, professionally, I really made a difference here because of what?
It would actually be that first QAR that I talked about, the quality assurance review, getting the department established, up and running with good procedures, with charters, with processes that were working. We were doing annual risk assessments and get it all the way through its first QAR at the 5-year mark in 2014. It was the most anxious situation I was putting myself into, because I mean, really, you're asking people to come in and, audit you and assess you. But when I went through that process, I learned so much. I received the highest score. And when that report was submitted to the board and to senior leadership saying, you've got a professional audit department here, as small as it is, it conforms to standards, things are good. For me, that was the biggest accomplishment that I've had probably in the 12 years I've been at St. Leo.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, looking at your resume, couldn't be more highly regarded. I noticed you were a speaker at a conference or two. Could you expand further on what some of those professional certifications are? Because they sound great to somebody like me, but I don't know necessarily what, entails a CFE, a CRMA, that kind of thing.
Sure. So I like to say this about audit. Okay, so I have an accounting background, and people will come up to me and say, I got a question about taxes. No, I am not the person you want to talk to. And audit's the same way. It covers a wide range, just like accounting covers a wide range. You can specialize, or a physician. You don't go to a cardiologist if your wife is pregnant and expecting. I hope that's not where you're going anyway. But so audits like that too, in terms of it covers a wide range of things. It can cover financial and operational and internal control and fraud and just so much stuff. And then there's specific things like IT and construction and so on and so forth. So those certifications cover a wide range. So the Certified Internal Auditor, CIA, is the flagship certification from the Institute of Internal Auditors. That's essentially the governing body for internal auditors. So that's the CIA, Certified Internal Auditor. Next is the CFE, which is a Certified Fraud Examiner. So part of any audit that we do is we look for fraud or for the potential of fraud. So having that certification gives me that additional training in fraud. So I'm required every year to take 10 fraud hours and 2 ethics hours to maintain that one. Then there's the CRMA. CRMA is also issued by the Institute of Internal Auditors. That stands for a Certification in Risk Management Assurance. All of our audits are supposed to be risk-based. You start with a risk assessment. You want to work on audits or engagements that have some risk to the organization, because the bottom line is, if there's no risk, then we're wasting time looking at something. So that certification enforces the risk side of it and requires 5 annual hours a year in risk. Then the CCEP, that's the certification in compliance and ethics. So with most certifications nowadays, there's an ethics component. And then I also perform a lot of compliance reviews at the university. A university, I used to say, you would probably respectfully disagree, but I used to say it's like a little city. We've got our police department, and we have our, resident area, and we've got our restaurants, and we've got our shops, and, we have our roadways, and, we have our crews and all of that. So in a microscopic way, it is. There's lots of various components. So there's also a lot of compliance coming from all kinds of different areas, from the federal government, from the state, and higher ed, because of the business that it's
Mrs.
in.
Ketchel, would you please stay closer to the microphone so it can be recorded? Thank you.
Yes, sorry. Because higher ed is in a unique business where we're collecting money and people can go on payment plans, we end up being subject to some regulations that were not intended for higher ed, such as some of the banking regulations. So there's a lot of compliance piece. So that certification goes to the compliance. And then the last one, the CICA, is a Certified Internal Control Auditor. Because the university internal audit department started at the very beginning of 2009, there were a lot of processes that had not gone through a proper internal control assessment. So they were just processes that just got documented because that's what so-and-so was doing at that time. So this is the way we're documenting it. So a lot of the audits that I was doing at the university for a long time were internal control reviews. So that certification just goes to support that. So I hope that explains what all those letters mean and why they're related to audit in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good thing. There's just a lot of them. I guess you kind of touched on it there, but what are some of the similarities and differences that you might perceive between working in, a college institution versus a city? I know you touched on that a little bit, but just what are some of those similarities and differences, and how do you think you'll be able to, I guess, make another fresh start here?
So one of the big differences, I'll start with that, is the fact that you have to operate in the sunshine. St. Leo is a private university, so while we have board meetings and some things have to be posted because we are a not-for-profit and we do take federal and state funds, so we have some regulations around that. The university does not function in the sunshine where the city does. So that's going to be a huge difference because the processes for performing audits and documenting your results and then writing reports is going to be very, very important, because in most cities, only the final report is what's discoverable, not the various iterations thereof prior to getting there. But your work papers, if you get into litigation, can also be discoverable as well. So that would be a huge difference, and that would take work with the board and understanding how the city operates in that way. In terms of similarities, I said just a little bit ago that a university is like a small city and there's all these different facets. So I think some of the similarities are going to be that you have all these multitude of different departments and functions and skill levels and employees all over doing various different things and different assets and buildings and things all over, just like the university. And from an audit perspective, that's really exciting, because the one thing I get to say is I don't really have an average day. My average day is different from day to day based on my audit, what I'm doing, who I'm working with. And being an audit and getting out there and seeing all of that, you really see the organization through all those various lenses. So to that regard, there's similarity to the university there.
Okay, thank you. And is there anything not on your resume that you think is worthy of note, or that you would like us to know about yourself or your professional history?
I don't think so. I think the resume is fairly exhaustive. It's in a small font and 2 pages, so I think there's a lot on there, and I think I got the things I want and need on there.
Okay, understood.
I think so.
And then my last question is just if you, what your day-to-day operations are like as a director, and if you have the experience in creating a calendar and a manual.
Oh, yes, I've done that. So what I do as the director, I've created, so my department started as a 1-person department. Then it was 2012 where we got the 2nd position, and then 2016 where I got the 3rd position, and then the 3rd position left in 2019, and I don't have that position anymore. So yes, I do have the skill set to set up the department. I have the skill set to put the processes and templates in place. So what I did is I have a network drive that I use. Everything is set, every audit is set up exactly the same. It's got a name and a number, and it's got the work papers and the planning and the reporting. And so we use the same templates so that there's consistency, again, from a reviewer perspective. And then because I have more than 1 person in my department, we have a review process for all of our work that we do. So what I would do coming here is take what I already know and see what will work, and then modify what won't. But I've done everything. I've written charters, I've done the department processes, all of the template forms, including the audit programs, the risk assessment, the report that we issue, memorandums that we issue, internal control reviews that we issue, investigation that we issue. I have a template for everything at this point, so there's a lot of consistency and ultimately efficiencies.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ticiotis.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome to Tarpon Springs, Ms. Kessel.
Thank you.
As I told the last applicant, I don't really have any questions concerning your professional credentials. You're well qualified for this position. I think you've demonstrated that you can work in this governmental framework and environment quite well. I want to just start with some questions and kind of determine, again, whether you're the right person for this job. In your application, you said that you could start about a month after you accept an offer. Is that correct? Still?
Yes, that is correct. I would not feel comfortable giving any less than a 1-month notice because I am in a leadership capacity at the university. Additionally, it would be proper for me to give my notice to the board. And right now, our next board meeting is in January.
Okay. You had a date here that's of 11/1. We're well beyond that. So we're looking at sometimes maybe February.
Yes,
Okay.
I would have to look at my calendar. I know that the board meeting's in January. I don't know the exact date, but I do know it's towards the end of the month.
That's fine. That's good enough. Thank you very much. Let me just say, I like the way you described Tarpon Springs as a town. I feel that way too. I don't think we've quite made the city yet, but I like Tarpon as a town. I want to find out, as far as how you moved into your employment with St. Leo's. I saw that you received your MBA in 2007 at St. Leo's. I would assume that you were, I don't want to call it recruited, but talked to at that time about coming to work for St. Leo's at that time as a graduate student or recently graduated graduate student?
No,
Okay.
but one of my schoolmates that I was doing the MBA program was, and he was hired as the controller. So then once he was hired as the controller at St. Leo, he immediately reached out to me and said, I'm completely rebuilding the accounting department. I really need you. Please come.
Okay.
So I wasn't recruited while I was a student, but my then boss was.
Okay. Well, that's admirable anyway, that you move from being a student there into their staff. That's, I'm married to a person that did that happened to. So that takes a lot of doing to have that kind of confidence in people.
Thank you.
From my perspective, and I'm sure it's the same with the other commissioners, we're looking for somebody for long-term employment here. And I would assume that's what you are as well.
Yes.
The one question I have is, I noticed where you live, and I did a little Google Maps or whatever you want to call it, and you're about 15 minutes away from St. Leo, and your commute to here would be about an hour. May I ask how you're planning on dealing with that?
So first of all, I will tell you that I've only recently moved to Wesley Chapel. Prior to that, I was in Ruskin commuting to St. Leo. So driving an hour is not something that is foreign to me. Sadly, I've only been commuting the 15 minutes for, well, I would say a year, but in that year, we've had a pandemic where I've been home a good portion of the time. So again, driving a longer distance is not something that I'm not used to. I at one time lived in Citrus County and drove down to St. Leo from Citrus County. So again, I'm extremely familiar with interstate driving, with county road driving, and I do prefer to start my day earlier. So if there is flexibility in that, that does usually help with some of the drive. That can usually shave sometimes like 10 or 15 minutes off.
Yeah. Before coming back, I'm from Tarpon, but before coming here, we lived in Washington, D.C. area, and that was the one thing that I dreaded was a commute. I just want to make sure that you are here for the long term and that commute isn't a factor in terms of your decision of whether to stay on or not. So we'll just take that for what it is right now. I do have a question. You're eminently certified as a CIA. I understand what the qualifications are for the CIA through the Institute of Internal Auditors, and it's an international certification, not just something that you would typically see in a state or the U.S.
Right.
So that speaks for itself as well. But why aren't you a CPA? You're qualified to be a CPA as well, I would think, based on your background with your accounting and your MBA. Is that just something you've chosen not to do and you just are in love with internal auditing?
So given the choice between accounting and auditing, I will pick auditing any day because I love the variety. But to answer your question about the CPA, I obtained my accounting degree in the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan, in order to sit for the CPA exam, I would have needed to work 4,000 hours under a CPA or have gotten enough courses in a graduate level and then work under a CPA for 2,000 hours for 1 year in order to sit for the exam. At the time when I got my accounting degree in Michigan, that situation wasn't lined up for me. I did not pursue a master's until I had moved to Florida. And then when I pursued my master's, I had already long forgotten about a CPA. And then I pursued an MBA, which is not a discipline in accounting. So right now, I don't have enough accounting credits to qualify myself now to sit for the exam. And the other thing, to be perfectly honest, it has now been so long that I've taken accounting courses and have worked in accounting that I would need an extensive amount of refresher courses
Right.
probably.
Yeah, I wouldn't be talking about doing it now, but it just seemed like you've got the background for having done that. And I know a lot of people that are not CPAs. They can do a lot of work without being CPAs, and they've chosen that route as well. I was just curious to that because you do have some nice education there. As far as inventory audits at St. Leo, have you done many of those? Okay. That's all you need to say there. I didn't see that listed anywhere. Training, have you done much training?
Yes, I developed an internship program at the university. So we have a new intern every fall semester. So there's lots of training with that. We actually have the interns work on real audits along with us. Sometimes I assign them a smaller audit, call it a mini audit, or they work alongside us on our regular audits, again, depending upon scope. But in all of that, there's a lot of training. I have also hired a senior auditor and 2 staff auditors at my time at St. Leo and have developed all of them, trained and developed them as well. The one retired, another one left and is at PwC now. So there is training that it's constantly going on. I'm doing a construction audit right now at the university, and my staff auditor has never done a construction audit. So there's a lot of training going on right now.
We haven't had a full-time employee internal auditor here for a while, and it might be helpful with some training experience to, I don't want to say educate, but go and tell people what you do on the city staff for the purpose of avoiding the situation that you had with that one individual that
Yes.
you mentioned. I was going to ask that, but Vice Mayor Carr had already beat me to the punch on that. So,
well, and I would actually just chime in and say, I think educate is a perfect word to use because a lot of people have a concept of what internal audit is. And it really is not just marketing and branding myself or the department, but it is also educating. And it's not just educating leadership, but also the board in terms of understanding, this is the lane that you're in. Do we want to swerve? Do we want to turn? So there is education that goes on. I'm constantly providing my board with materials from the IAA.
that's good. Thank you. Let's see. Could you go over your salary requirement again? I noticed that in your minimum salary expected, you put 98,600. I know that we advertised right at that amount. Is that where you got that from?
Yes.
Okay. And I didn't quite hear your answer before. Is that something that would be acceptable to you? Is that what you're saying here? Or
The high end of your pay scale would be acceptable to me.
Okay.
I currently make more than that.
I noticed you'd be taking a cut from what you do at St. Leo, I think about $7,000, if I'm not mistaken. Are there any other benefits that you get at St. Leo's that are not bonuses, if you will, or monetary?
We do receive bonuses, but they're actually the last couple of years, just due to the financial performance, we haven't. The only other benefit really that in terms of money is they do a close to 10%. It's like 9.5% match of your salary into an investment fund.
I'll be honest with you, this is something I've not discussed with our HR department as far as your retirement. And that would be something I would suspect, hopefully, that maybe you've discussed that with them before you've gotten here to this point. But I'll leave you that with the HR director if we get to that point.
Okay.
I believe that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other commission comments?
I have one, Mayor. Just the same courtesy that we extended the first applicant. If Ms. Kessel has any questions of the commission.
Yeah, I want to make sure if anybody has any other questions before we go to that.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Mrs. Castle, would you have a closing statement?
May I ask a couple of questions before the closing statement?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we out of time?
Sure, go ahead.
One of the questions I want to ask of you is, what are you looking for in your internal auditor? And I'm not talking about the technical skill set that it's somebody who can perform an audit, but in terms of personality and management style, what are you looking for?
In my opinion, is you already cover some of the things that we're looking for. Personally, I would like to see someone that not only that is going to check the financials of the city, but also to provide with the guidance and recommendations of processes and procedures that we have in place, and things that we can actually put some flags, checks and balances.
Okay.
Anybody has any other questions?
I have.
Go ahead.
In one word for me, it's independence. I just think that that's something that I prize a lot and put a lot of value on. You work for the commission, not the city manager or any of his staff. And I think the way you've described the way you've handled matters is quite well. And I look forward to that, but I just wanted to actually kind of state a little more emphatically that independence is what I'm looking for. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Terrapini, you are online.
I'm here, Mayor.
Do you have any other questions that you'd like to ask?
No, sir.
Oh, thank you. Ms. Castle, did you have any closing statements that you want to make?
I just want to thank you for your time. I want to iterate my interest in the position. Again, just iterate again my qualifications. I have started in an internal audit department. I have been an auditor in different capacities. I am interested in long-term employment. I have been at my current employer. It'll be 13 years in March. I'm not looking to use this as any type of platform to leave. And I love my current employer. I'm just looking for an exciting challenge at this point in time. I think I've done what I can do at St. Leo. But moving over to the city of Tarpon Springs is something I think that'll bring a great deal of excitement. And I think that you would be pleased with your selection if your selection were me. Okay,
Thank you so
that's
much,
all I
Ms.
have to
Castle.
say.
Thank you so much for coming. Ms. Niffa, we finished with the second applicant. The next item on the agenda is discussion regarding and possible selection of internal auditor. I think both applicants are very well qualified, both have the necessary degrees and experience to be our internal auditor. However, Mr. Henderson has experience in government sector and private sector. He was very enthusiastic, but I am concerned that he's moving around a lot from one job to another. And he really hasn't stayed long enough in one position to get the experience that I will be feeling comfortable with. The second applicant was She has a lot of experience as an internal auditor in learning institutions in the medical field. She's a very stable and consistent employee. She worked 12 years, and she's still working for the university. She has no government experience, and she has many other expertise in auditing, and I think I was very impressed with her presentation. Vice Mayor Carr?
I think both applicants did great. I know I was a little skeptical on the resumes that we received, but from the interview process, I was actually really surprised how personable both the applicants were. Myself, I guess I just picture an internal auditor to be more bland and not as personable. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that in both applicants. I think both applicants shared a passion to do a great job for Tarpon Springs. I think both could be great applicants for this position. So I don't have any other comments right now.
Okay. Commissioner Terrapini?
Thanks, Mayor. I think first and foremost to the board, I think we made the right the right decision by trying to host this in-person interview with the applicants. Given that, I would say that on paper, applicant number one to me looked a little bit more desirable in terms of some of the experiences, albeit they were short-lived with the employers, which I also found to be of concern. And I think he presented well, but I think that the second applicant was a little bit more genuine. And I think she has more expertise in areas that I think this board desires to have some independent auditing and counsel in terms of inventorying or construction projects. So I think that she adds a lot of value from that or on that side of the coin. And I definitely like, her longevity in her positions. She seems more sincere to me. And I personally can appreciate her comparison as it relates to St. Leo being like a small community or a small town such as Tarpon. That's kind of how I envision that the university and the surrounding communities, San Antonio and Dade City area. So if I had to pick right now, I think I'm leaning more towards that applicant number two.
Thank you. Commissioner Donovan?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I absolutely want to thank both the candidates for being here tonight. It's a really difficult process to go up there and interview in public with the five, potential members of the board and have the citizens here. So, I mean, it's a difficult process. Both of them should be proud for making it this far. And I found both of them to be extremely bright, extremely personable. Their resumes certainly weren't anomalies. I think they both did a really good job. I would also be leaning towards Ms. Kessel, strictly due to the fact of her experience, over 20 years of internal auditing experience, and kind of the same objective that we have here to get our internal auditing created and, up and running. I think, she's already done that with St. Leo. And I think the similarities there outweigh the differences. So I'd be leaning towards her, but again, I think, neither applicant, regardless of what happens tonight, should be discouraged. I think they both did a fantastic job.
Thank you. Commissioner Vaticiores?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the Budget Advisory Committee did well in their selection of their final applicants, and I think we've got the two top ones that were remaining. I think Mr. Henderson spoke from my perspective, a little too philosophically as far as what can be done and the approach he would take and things of that nature, mostly from, not really from experience, but things that he could do. I think his auditing experience that I've seen, again, probably more so of the short duration with each of the employers didn't really allow him to do much of that. So he was limited to the one, I think, and with his last employer. Mrs. Kessel spoke from experience. I think she's well-grounded. I personally think she would be a better fit for not just the city government, but for Tarpon Springs in general. I just saw her as a Tarpon Springs resident myself in talking to that and listening to her. I'm just hoping that if we extend an offer to her, that commute doesn't become problematic. I'm not sure what we can do about that. Obviously, nothing. It's going to be up to her. I think her salary, the only way I can describe this is I think she asked for the upper end of the salary range. I'm very comfortable with that. I'm just hoping she's going to be stepping back from about $7,000 with St. Leo's, plus she's going to have that additional commute time, which right now gas is cheap, but I can tell you from experience, gasoline costs run up when you've got that commute going on. So if we get to that point, I'd like to talk about that a little bit. But I'm very happy with Mrs. Kessel as far as my selection goes.
Thank you. We're going to go to public comments. Do we have any public comments? Do we have anyone that is wants to speak? Please state your name, your address for the record, please.
Panayoti Kuyas, 595 Peninsula Avenue. I was impressed with both candidates' interviews today. I do have a very important question. You know, with the current environment that we are in Tarpon Springs, how can we know this internal auditor is going to be reporting right and not without preference? You know, I want to make sure that this gets put out in the record when the Budget Advisory Committee presented to the top candidates. I find it concerning that all 5 of you were worried about the temporary employment from city to city. And that makes me wonder, was the Budget Advisory Committee worried about that too when they presented all of this? Because you all 5 said the same thing. I also wanted to, remind people of how 2 of the commissioners on this board were part back in 2010 when this can was getting kicked down the road. Now, some of these commissioners might want to be helping out department heads or the city manager because they want to scratch each other's backs. Well, the point is to make sure that this internal auditor is working for the citizens of Tarpon Springs. It's going to be tough relationships. There are going to be some battles back and forth, but this has to happen for a better Tarpon Springs. I will also mention the Budget Advisory Committee from November 10th on the BOC when I came. I believe it was Mr. Banther who was presenting to you the 2 internal auditors based off qualifications. Let me find my document. So David Banther, a partner with Mr. Terrapini, who's not on screen right now, on March 16th of this year, he said, I asked you to vote to re-elect Jacob Carr, vote yes on a land sale referendum, and yes to all charter amendments with the exception of the one regarding the internal auditor. So I have to ask you all, why was someone running on the board ask his fellow friends to vote no on that internal auditor, and then be one of the lead people to represent or to bring up these candidates? I find it to be a conflict of interest. And regardless of the biased opinion, the individuals are supposed to make a decision that's not biased. Well, I don't find that to be the case. So I also asked that when we first started, this charter review, like I said, we kicked the can down the road. And we ended up, it was Townsend who referred to, hey, we're going to get this outside RFP done, but at some point we're going to find an internal auditor. For 10 years, and now we're getting to it. And the citizens of Tarpon Springs are really happy. I wanted to provide all the minutes regarding all this. That way, whoever's selected They can go back and see the process. And I will also mention the the candidate resumes. I don't know why it's not available to the public. Maybe it was and I didn't see it, but I thought they should be presented here today. That way we could all look at them. And they both definitely had good interviews. I like the first one just due to the fact he kept bringing up the residents in the community. But like I said, I didn't have the resume in front to be able to do everything. And I do agree with the experience from an auditing standpoint. We need someone long-term. I will keep all these into the minutes for the record. If I will give them to Miss Irene, that way she can have them. That way they can be distributed accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments on this item? Here none. Ms. Jacobs said we received any emails on this item.
No emails were received.
Thank you. Mr. Jump, do we have any attendees wishing to speak on this item?
If anyone would like to speak on this item from Zoom, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
Thank you. It's back to the commission. We need a motion either to select a candidate, one or two, or reject both candidates and re-advertise. Need a
Mayor,
motion?
may I ask a point of order, just a question as far as how to proceed? On that recommendation, and we haven't heard from Ms. Niffen, is there something we would include a recommendation on the salary as well as part of this motion? Or would that be something that's going to be negotiated later?
That's something that needs to be negotiated. We have given the range of the salary.
Okay.
And then needs to become
And then at some point in the future, we would hire the candidate or
Right.
the applicant that we nominate.
Yes.
Based on the specific
Yeah.
salary.
And I'd like to ask Ms. Niffen, what's the next step? If you would, please.
Thank you.
What kind of investigations or any, you're going to be calling references or?
Honorable Board of Commissioners, I do have, excuse me, a follow-up to what we were discussing. We have conducted the background checks, both were satisfactory. We contacted the employers. The responses from the employers, we had one, and it was for candidate number 2. The next process would be for you to make a decision, and then we would contact the person, offer them the job, negotiate the salary, and then we begin the process of the pre-employment physical, because we've already done a background check.
I have a question here. Ms.
Go
Niffen.
ahead. Yeah.
Ms. Niffen, we're going to do this by contract. Is that correct?
I beg your pardon?
The employment will be by contract?
I believe so.
Okay, so that would be not just the salary, but the terms of employment
Yes.
and that sort of thing. And then, Mayor, I would suspect we're going to leave that up to Ms. Niffen to create that employment contract, or is that?
Yes, but that's something that it needs to be approved by us
No, I understand
Yeah.
that, but I mean,
Yeah. to review that.
I
Yeah.
guess what I'm getting at is that, just from a process perspective, I'm just asking a question. We've got an employment contract, then we have to present that employment contract, or that's negotiated with the applicant that we choose this evening.
Correct.
And then that, and so those are the terms. Then it's put into the form of a contract. Two approaches. One, to either have that contract come to us and look at it and then approve it before it goes to the applicant or the finalist, or we do the whole thing at one time.
Well, in my opinion is, when the contract has been drafted, it would be negotiated with the person that we offer in the position. And if they agree with it, it's just a matter of come to us and review it. And any suggestions that we have or something we don't like.
I just want to make sure if there's nothing special in there that the applicant is asking for, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Well, that's why it needs to go back to them before it comes to us to negotiate, before it come to us.
No,
Is that what you're
I'm
talking
saying
about?
is, once it's agreed to between Mrs. Niffen and the finalist, the person that we choose would, and if there's something special in there that perhaps the applicant would like to confirm that it's okay with us, or does that
Mhm.
come to us at?
Let me ask the attorney, what is your legal opinion on that?
So my belief is that we're going to totally negotiate that agreement. It's going to be in a written form. It's going to be approved by the applicant, and then it comes to you for consideration.
Okay.
And if it's acceptable the way that it's currently written, then it would just be approved. If there is some issue relative to some type of compensation or benefit that's provided that is not acceptable, then we'd go back to the applicant and make the appropriate change. But I think it should be the applicant having reviewed the agreement and it be in its final form when it comes to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
basically,
That makes sense. yeah.
yes.
Now I need a motion.
Motion to approve extending an offer to Ms. Monica Kessel as internal auditor.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis,
Yes?
Commissioner Donovan,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr,
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas.
Yes. Thank you. Ms. Niffen, I
Beg your
guess you're
pardon?
going to let them know.
Yes, I will let them know. Waiting room. So
Okay,
if you did so choose, I will let them know right now.
thank you.
Is there a letter or anything that we follow up with?
We will.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that concludes the special session agenda, and we go to staff comments. Police chief,
No comments, Mayor. Thank you.
okay. City attorney,
Tonight, thank you.
city manager,
No comments.
city clerk,
No comment.
Mayor Carr,
No comments, Mayor.
Commissioner Terrapini.
Thank you all again for granting me the opportunity to be with y'all via Zoom.
Feel better.
Appreciate it.
Commissioner Donovan,
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just one public comment that I didn't have a chance to make at the last meeting because we ran out of time is just that our city's term on Ford Pinellas has come to a close. So it's going to rotate now. As you guys know, it's between us and Oldsmar and Safety Harbor. But my last meeting was early November.
thank you for serving and represent us.
Yep, thank you.
Commissioner Vaticiotis,
Are these blue folders ours? Did anybody else get one of these?
we all got one.
Okay.
think they're
thank you.
yours.
We all got one.
Other than that, no comment, Mayor.
No comment. Well, I'd just like to ask commissioners that the next two meetings, being that this is the end of the year, are very, very large. And I will ask again, if you please get your questions answered by the staff before the meetings. And if you please make your comments during the meetings to be direct and short to the point. That way, we don't have to extend the time after 11 o'clock. You probably see the draft agendas that came out. They're pretty large, so I will appreciate if your cooperations. With that, that concludes the special session. It's adjourned at 9:11 p.m. That was